Marry me, and in 1 year, you can walk away with everything you've ever needed. The words didn't sound real. Not in the quiet office where Lily Harper had just been told to pack her things and leave before noon. She was still holding the cardboard box with her coffee mug, a worn notebook, and a pen that barely worked when Ethan Caldwell said it like it was just another business offer, like he wasn't asking her to become his wife. The city stretched behind him through the glass wall, sunlight reflecting off steel and glass. Everything sharp and distant, just like him. Lily blinked once, then again, trying to understand how her worst morning had turned into something even more unreal. "I'm sorry, what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan didn't repeat himself right away. He studied her instead, his gaze steady, unreadable, like he was measuring something deeper than her reaction. He was known for that, seeing what others missed, making decisions no one else dared to make. But this wasn't a deal anyone could understand. "A contract marriage," he said finally, his tone calm, controlled. 12 months. You play the role of my wife. Public appearances, family events, nothing more. In return, I'll make sure you're taken care of. Financially, professionally, completely." Lily let out a small breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Just an hour ago, she had been a secretary no one noticed, quietly fixing schedules, staying late, making sure everything ran smoothly without ever being seen. And now she was being asked to step into a life she had only ever watched from the outside. "Why me?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Ethan's jaw tightened for just a second, a crack so small most people would miss it. "Because you're reliable," he said. "And because you won't complicate things." The words should have stung, but somehow they didn't. Maybe because part of her believed them. She had always been the quiet one, the easy choice, the one people trusted because she never asked for more. Lily looked down at the box in her hands, at the life she was about to lose, then back at the man offering her something she couldn't even fully understand. "And after a year?" she asked softly. Ethan stepped closer, not enough to invade her space, but enough that she could feel the shift in the air between them. "After a year," he said, his voice lower now, "you're free. No strings. No expectations. Free." The word echoed in her chest, but it didn't feel as simple as he made it sound. Nothing about this felt simple. Still, she found herself asking, "And what do you get out of it?" For the first time, Ethan hesitated. Just a second. Just enough for something human to slip through. "Stability," he answered. Lily didn't fully understand what that meant, not yet. But she saw something in his eyes then, something quiet, something tired, something almost lonely. And for reasons she couldn't explain, that was the moment everything shifted. Because this wasn't just a contract. It wasn't just a deal. It was the beginning of something neither of them was ready for. And somehow, standing there with nothing left to hold on to, Lily nodded. "Okay," she said, her voice trembling just enough to betray her. "I'll do it." And just like that, the line between her old life and whatever came next disappeared. He did not explain the rules before he reached into his pocket and placed the ring in front of her. It was simple, elegant, a thin band of white gold with a small diamond that caught the afternoon light just enough to feel real without being overwhelming. Lily stared at it, her fingers still wrapped around the edge of the cardboard box, her heart beating faster for reasons she could not name. "You are giving me this before I even agree to the details?" she asked quietly. Ethan's expression did not change. "You already agreed," he said. There was no arrogance in his voice, just certainty, like he had already calculated every possible outcome and knew this was the one that would happen. Lily swallowed, slowly setting her box down on the chair beside her. The office suddenly felt smaller, quieter, like the rest of the world had faded away. "Then explain it to me," she said. Ethan nodded once, as if he had been expecting that. "You will move into my penthouse tonight. You will attend events with me, meet my family, and present a stable image to the public. There will be no physical expectations beyond what is necessary for appearances. You will have your own space, your own freedom within the structure of the agreement." His words were precise, measured, like clauses already written in a document she had not yet seen. Lily folded her hands together, trying to steady the slight tremble in her fingers. "And if I want to leave before the year is over?" she asked. Ethan paused for a fraction of a second, then answered, "You will not." It was not a threat. It was a statement. And somehow, that made it heavier. Lily looked back at the ring. It was beautiful, but it felt like more than jewelry. It felt like a line she would cross and never fully return from. There has to be a contract, she said. Ethan stepped toward his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a neatly prepared folder. Of course it was already ready. Of course he had planned this down to the smallest detail. He handed it to her, their fingers almost brushing for a second before he let go. Lily felt that moment longer than she should have. She opened the folder and scanned the pages. Legal language filled every line, outlining responsibilities, boundaries, and an end date that felt both distant and dangerously close. 1 year. 365 days of pretending to be someone she was not. Or maybe, becoming someone she had never been allowed to be. You have time to read it, Ethan said, his voice softer now, though still controlled. I do not expect an immediate answer. Lily almost laughed at that, a quiet, breathless sound. You already know my answer, she said. Ethan did not deny it. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with something unspoken. Finally, Lily closed the folder. One condition, she said, surprising even herself. Ethan's gaze sharpened slightly. Name it. Lily took a small breath. If I am going to do this, I need to understand one thing. Why does someone like you need a contract marriage at all? For the first time, Ethan looked away. Just briefly, toward the window, toward the city below. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost distant. Because real things do not last, he said. The words lingered in the air, softer than everything else he had said, but somehow heavier. Lily felt something shift in her chest again, that same quiet pull she could not explain. Without thinking too much longer, she picked up the pen from the desk, the one that felt far too expensive compared to the one in her box. She signed her name, and as she did, Ethan reached for the ring again, stepping closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. Then we begin now, he said. Lily nodded, her breath catching slightly as he took her hand and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had always been meant to be there. And somehow, that was the most unsettling part of all. The wedding felt like a performance that everyone understood except her. Lily stood beneath soft white lights, surrounded by people dressed in perfect smiles and expensive silence, her hand resting lightly in Ethan's as if it belonged there. Cameras flashed every few seconds, capturing a moment that looked like love but felt like something carefully arranged. She could hear whispers moving through the room, curiosity wrapped in polite voices, wondering how a quiet secretary had suddenly become the woman standing beside one of the most powerful men in the city. Ethan did not react to any of it. His expression remained calm, unreadable, his grip steady but distant, like he was holding a responsibility, not a person. Just follow my lead, he murmured under his breath, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Lily nodded slightly, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. The ceremony itself was short, efficient, almost like it had been scheduled between meetings. Vows were exchanged in measured tones. Rings confirmed what had already been decided, and before she could fully process it, it was done. Applause filled the room, soft and controlled, like everything else. Lily forced a small smile, aware of every eye on her, every camera capturing her face, her dress, the way she stood beside him. It was beautiful, everything about it, but it did not feel like hers. When the reception began, Ethan stayed close. Enough to maintain the image, but never too close to cross the invisible line he had set. He introduced her when necessary, guided her through conversations, and occasionally placed a hand lightly at her back, each touch brief, precise, and strangely careful. You are doing fine, he said once, as they stepped away from a group of guests. Lily let out a quiet breath. It feels like I am pretending to be someone else. Ethan looked at her for a moment, something thoughtful passing through his eyes. That is the point, he said, though his voice was softer than before. The night stretched on, filled with polite laughter and conversations that blurred together, until finally, the last guest left and the silence returned. The penthouse was nothing like the world she had just stepped out of. It was quiet, spacious, filled with soft light and clean lines, everything in its place. Lily stood near the entrance for a moment, taking it in, the reality of where she was settling slowly around her. Your room is down the hall on the left, Ethan said, setting his keys on the table. You will find everything you need. Lily nodded, holding her hands together in front of her, unsure what to say next. This was supposed to be the moment where something changed, where the distance between them shifted. But it did not. It stayed exactly the same. "Good night, Lily," he said, already turning away. "Good night," she replied softly. She walked down the hall, each step quiet against the floor, until she reached the door he had mentioned. Inside, the room was beautiful, prepared in advance, like everything else in this arrangement. Clothes in her size, neatly arranged. Personal items she had not asked for. Even her favorite brand of tea sat on the nightstand. Lily paused, her fingers brushing lightly against the ring on her hand. It still felt unfamiliar, like something she was only borrowing. Later that night, long after she had changed and tried to rest, she stepped out quietly to get a glass of water. The apartment was silent, but a faint light came from the living room. She hesitated, then moved closer, just enough to see him. Ethan sat alone on the couch, his tie loosened, his posture no longer perfect. His head leaned back slightly, eyes closed, one hand pressed lightly against his chest, as if he was holding something in. The strong, controlled man from earlier was gone. In his place was someone quieter, heavier, almost fragile in a way she had not expected. Lily did not step forward. She did not speak. She just stood there for a moment, watching, feeling that same quiet pull again. And when she finally turned away, something inside her had already begun to change. The next morning began too quietly, like the apartment itself was holding its breath. Lily woke before sunrise, the unfamiliar bed still too perfect, the silence too complete. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she felt the ring against her skin, and everything came back all at once. She sat up slowly, her fingers brushing over the thin band, as if touching it again might make it feel more real. It did not. It only reminded her that nothing about this was normal. She stepped out into the hallway, the soft light guiding her toward the kitchen. The city beyond the glass walls was just beginning to wake, a pale blue sky stretching above buildings that looked distant and cold. She moved carefully, unsure of her place in this space, until she reached the counter and began to make tea, her movements quiet and familiar, the only thing that still felt like her. When the kettle clicked off, she poured the water slowly, watching the steam rise, grounding herself in something simple. "You are up early." His voice came from behind her, low, steady, but not as sharp as the day before. Lily turned slightly, her heart skipping just enough to notice. Ethan stood a few feet away, already dressed, his posture composed, but something about him was different. There was a faint tension in his shoulders, a quiet heaviness in his eyes that had not fully disappeared from the night before. "I could not sleep much," she admitted softly. He nodded once, as if that answer made sense. "You will adjust." Lily hesitated, then placed a second cup on the counter. "Do you want some tea?" she asked. It was a small question, simple, almost instinctive. Ethan paused, just for a second. Then he stepped closer. "I do not usually," he started, then stopped. His gaze shifted to the cup, then back to her. "Thank you." The words sounded unfamiliar coming from him, like something he did not use often. Lily handed him the cup, their fingers brushing again. That same brief contact that lingered longer than it should have. They stood there in silence, the city slowly waking around them, the moment stretching in a way neither of them seemed ready to break. "Your schedule is already updated," Ethan said after a while, returning to something safer, something structured. "There is a family dinner tonight. You will need to be there." Lily nodded, taking a small sip of her tea. "Your family knows?" she asked. "They know enough," he replied. That answer did not feel complete, but she did not push further. Not yet. Later that afternoon, while organizing the living room, Lily noticed something slightly out of place. A small bottle of medication sat near the edge of the table, half hidden behind a stack of documents. She hesitated, then picked it up, her eyes scanning the label without fully understanding the medical terms. Before she could think too much about it, a voice cut through the quiet. "Do not touch that." Ethan's tone was sharper now, not loud, but firm enough to stop her instantly. Lily turned, surprised, her hand still holding the bottle. "I am sorry, I did not mean to, just leave it." He stepped forward, taking it from her more quickly than necessary, his fingers tightening slightly around it. For a brief moment, the distance between them disappeared, replaced by something tense, something unguarded. Lily looked at him, Really looked this time and saw it clearly. The control he held so carefully was not natural. It was effort. It was something he had to maintain every second. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. The question hung between them, soft but direct. Ethan froze. Not physically, but something inside him paused, like he had not expected anyone to ask that. His eyes met hers, and for a second, the walls dropped just enough for her to see what was underneath. Not anger, not frustration, something deeper, something tired. "Do not look at me like that," he said, his voice lower now, almost warning, but not unkind. Lily did not look away. "Like what?" she asked. He exhaled slowly, turning slightly as if he needed space again. "Like you see something you should not." The room fell quiet again, but this time, it felt different. Not distant, not empty, just closer. And as Lily stood there, her heart beating a little faster, she realized something she had not expected. This was never just going to be a contract, because she had already started to see him, and he knew it. The rain started just after sunset, soft at first, then steady enough to blur the city lights into long lines of gold and white. Lily stood by the window, watching the glass fill with quiet movement, her fingers lightly wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The penthouse felt different tonight, less sharp, more still, as if the rain had softened the edges of everything inside it. She heard the door open behind her and did not turn right away. She already knew it was him. Ethan stepped in, the faint sound of rain following him, his jacket slightly damp at the shoulders. He closed the door with a quiet click and stood there for a moment, as if adjusting to the silence inside. "You are still awake," he said. Lily nodded, her eyes still on the window. "I could say the same." He moved past her, setting his keys down, loosening his tie with a slow, practiced motion. There was something heavier about him tonight, something she could feel even without looking directly at him. "The dinner is in 30 minutes, he said, his voice returning to that controlled tone. "We should leave soon." Lily turned then, studying him more closely. "You do not have to go," she said softly. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Ethan paused, his hand resting briefly against the edge of the table. "I always have to go." Lily took a small step closer, not enough to cross the space completely, but enough to shift the distance between them. "You look tired," she added, her voice gentle, not pushing, just noticing. Ethan let out a quiet breath, almost like a faint laugh without humor. "That is not new." The rain grew louder against the glass, filling the silence. That followed. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the lights flickered once, twice, and suddenly, everything went dark. The city outside remained glowing, but inside, the room was filled with a soft, unfamiliar shadow. Lily blinked, her heart jumping slightly at the sudden change. "It will come back," Ethan said, his voice steady in the dark. But it did not right away. The silence deepened, wrapped in the sound of rain and distant traffic below. Lily set her cup down carefully and moved toward the kitchen drawer, finding a small flashlight after a moment of searching. The beam was soft, warm, barely enough to light the space between them. She turned it slightly, and for the first time, there was no distance created by light or expectation. Just two people standing in the same quiet room. "You can sit," she said gently. Ethan hesitated, then lowered himself onto the couch, his posture less controlled now, less guarded. Lily moved to the other side, leaving space between them, but not too much. The rain filled the silence again, but this time, it did not feel empty. "Does it always feel like this?" she asked quietly. "Like what?" "Like you are carrying something all the time." Ethan did not answer immediately. He leaned back slightly, his eyes closing for just a second before opening again. "You ask questions that are not part of the agreement," he said. Lily gave a small, almost shy smile. "I know." Another pause. Then, softer this time, he said, "Yes." The single word lingered, simple but honest in a way he had not been before. Lily nodded slowly, accepting it without asking for more. She reached over after a moment and picked up his glass of water from the table, placing it closer to him without a word. It was a small thing, almost nothing, but he noticed. His gaze shifted to her hand, then to her face, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. "You do not have to do that," he said quietly. Lily looked at him, her expression calm, steady. "I know," she replied. The lights flickered again, then returned, filling the room with brightness that felt almost too sharp after the dark. The moment broke, just slightly. But something had already changed. Because this time, when Ethan stood, he did not move away immediately. And when he spoke again, his voice was lower, less distant. "We are going to be late," he said. But he did not sound like he minded as much as before. And as Lily reached for her coat, she realized that somewhere between the rain, the silence, and the darkness, the space between them had quietly begun to close. The Caldwell family estate stood just outside the city, a long driveway lined with tall trees and perfectly trimmed hedges that made everything feel distant before they even stepped inside. Lily adjusted her coat as the car came to a slow stop, her fingers unconsciously brushing over the ring on her hand. It felt heavier tonight, like it carried more meaning under the weight of unfamiliar eyes waiting inside. Ethan stepped out first, then moved around to open her door, his expression composed, every movement precise. "Stay close," he said quietly, offering his hand. Lily hesitated for half a second before placing her hand in his, the contact steady, warm, and unexpectedly grounding. "I will," she replied softly. Inside, the house was filled with light and quiet conversations that paused the moment they entered. Every glance turned toward them, measured and curious, some polite, some not. Lily felt it instantly, the difference between belonging and being observed. Ethan did not react. His grip on her hand remained firm as he guided her forward, his presence creating a path through the room without effort. "Mother," he said, stopping in front of an elegant woman standing near the center. Her gaze moved slowly from him to Lily, sharp and assessing, taking in every detail. "So this is your wife," she said, her voice smooth but distant. Lily felt the word land heavier than expected. Wife. Not secretary. Not assistant. Something else entirely. "Yes," Ethan replied simply. The woman stepped closer, offering a polite smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Lily, is it?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Lily answered, keeping her voice calm. The woman nodded slightly, then looked back at Ethan. "You move quickly. I make decisions when necessary," he said. The tension between them was quiet but unmistakable. Lily could feel it, even without understanding the full history behind it. As the evening continued, conversations unfolded around her, but she remained aware of the subtle distance people kept, the way they spoke to her with careful politeness, never quite fully accepting her presence. Ethan stayed close, his hand occasionally resting at her back, a silent reassurance or perhaps a reminder of the role she was playing. "You are handling this well," he murmured at one point. Lily gave a small nod. "I am trying." Before he could respond, another voice interrupted. "Ethan." They both turned. A woman approached, confident and composed, her presence immediately shifting the energy in the room. She was elegant, familiar with this world in a way Lily was not. "Claire," Ethan said, his tone neutral, but something subtle changed in his posture. Lily noticed it instantly. "I heard the news," Claire said, her eyes moving briefly to the ring on Lily's hand. "I did not expect you to settle down so suddenly." "Life is unpredictable," Ethan replied. Claire smiled slightly, then looked directly at Lily. "You must be very special." The words sounded polite, but something underneath them felt sharper. Lily held her gaze, steady despite the quiet pressure. "I do not know about that," she said softly. "I just showed up at the right time." For a moment, Claire said nothing. Then she let out a small, almost amused breath. That is one way to put it. The conversation moved on, but the air remained different. When Claire finally stepped away, Lily felt the shift immediately. "Who is she?" Lily asked quietly. Ethan's jaw tightened just slightly. "Someone from the past," he said. The answer was simple, but it carried more than he was saying. Lily nodded, looking down at her hands for a second before speaking again. She seemed important. Ethan did not respond right away. His gaze followed Claire across the room, then returned to Lily. "Not anymore," he said. The words were firm, but something in his voice felt unfinished. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and careful smiles, but something had changed. Lily could feel it in the way Ethan stayed. Closer than before, in the way his hand lingered a second longer when it touched hers. And for the first time, she noticed something else too. A flicker of something she had not seen in him before. Not control, not distance. Something quieter, something uncertain, and she did not know what to do with that. The ride back to the penthouse was quiet, but it was not the same kind of silence as before. This one carried weight, something unspoken that lingered between them like a question neither of them was ready to ask. Lily sat with her hands folded in her lap, her thumb brushing lightly over the ring again, her mind replaying the evening in fragments she could not fully sort through. Ethan stared out the window, the passing lights reflecting briefly in his eyes before disappearing again. When they finally arrived, he stepped out without a word, moving with that same controlled precision. But there was a slight delay in his movements now, something just a little less certain. Inside, the penthouse felt colder than usual, the quiet sharper after the long evening of polite noise. Lily set her coat aside and turned toward him, unsure whether to speak or let the silence settle. "You did not tell me about her," she said finally, her voice soft but steady. Ethan paused near the window, his back partially turned to her. "There are many things I did not tell you," he replied. The answer was calm, but it did not close the distance. Lily took a small step forward. "She is not just someone from the past," she said. "Not the way you said it." Ethan exhaled slowly, his hand resting against the glass for a moment before dropping to his side. "She is not relevant anymore," he said. Lily watched him carefully, noticing the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his words came a little too quickly. "Then why did it feel like she still mattered?" she asked. The question landed heavier than she expected. Ethan turned then, his expression sharper, something defensive rising just beneath the surface. "You are crossing a line," he said. Lily did not step back. "Maybe," she admitted, "but I am still your wife when we walk into rooms like that. I need to understand what I am stepping into." The words hung in the air, quiet but firm. Ethan looked at her, really looked this time, as if weighing something he had not planned for. Then, slowly, the sharpness faded just a little. "She was someone I trusted," he said finally. And that did not end well. Lily did not ask for more. She could hear it in his voice, the part he was not saying. The part that had shaped the way he saw everything now. "I am not her," she said gently. Ethan's gaze held hers, something unreadable shifting behind his eyes. "I know," he replied. But his voice was quieter now, less certain. The moment stretched, fragile in a way that felt new. Then, suddenly, it broke. Ethan's hand moved to his chest again, just like the night before, his breath catching slightly, as if something inside him had tightened without warning. Lily noticed immediately. "Ethan," she said, stepping closer. He shook his head slightly, as if trying to dismiss it, but his posture gave him away. The control slipped just enough to reveal what he had been holding back. "I am fine," he said, though the words did not sound convincing. Lily did not argue. She simply moved beside him, her hand hovering for a second before resting lightly on his arm. "Sit down," she said softly. He hesitated, then followed, lowering himself onto the couch again, his breathing uneven for a moment before slowly steadying. Lily reached for the glass of water, placing it in his hand the same way she had before, quiet and without expectation. He looked at her, something shifting again, something deeper this time. "You do not have to stay," he said, his voice low, almost distant. Lily shook her head gently. "I know," she said, "but I am choosing to." The words settled between them, simple but heavier than anything else she had said before. Ethan did not respond right away. He just looked at her, his guard lowered in a way she had not seen yet. And in that quiet moment, something changed again. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to matter. Because this time, when he did not pull away, it was not because of the contract. It was because he did not want her to leave. The morning everything broke did not feel dramatic at first. It felt quiet, almost normal, like any other day that had slowly begun to blur into a routine neither of them had planned for, but both had started to rely on. Lily stood in the kitchen, preparing tea the same way she had every morning, the soft sound of water filling the silence, the faint light of early sun stretching across the floor. The ring on her finger caught the light again, and this time, it did not feel as foreign as it once had. It felt familiar. That was what made it dangerous. The television in the living room turned on suddenly, breaking the calm. Lily glanced over, her attention pulled by the tone of the news anchor's voice, sharp and urgent in a way that did not match the quiet space around her. She walked closer slowly, her heart beginning to beat faster before she even understood why. "Breaking news this morning," the voice said. Reports have surfaced regarding businessman Ethan Caldwell and allegations that his recent marriage may not be what it appears to be. Lily froze. The screen shifted, showing images from their wedding, from public appearances, from moments that had been carefully constructed to look real. Then came the words that felt heavier than anything else. Sources claim the marriage is based on a private contract agreement, raising questions about its authenticity and purpose. The room felt smaller instantly. Lily could not move, could not breathe the same way. The contract. It was not supposed to be public. It was not supposed to be questioned like this. The door behind her opened, and she did not need to turn to know it was him. "Turn it off," Ethan said, his voice low, controlled, but carrying a tension she had not heard before. Lily did not move right away. "Is it true?" she asked softly, even though she already knew the answer. Ethan stepped closer, his presence filling the space behind her. "Yes," he said. No hesitation. No denial. Just truth. Lily nodded slowly, her eyes still on the screen as it replayed their life like it was something staged, something unreal. "So that is all this is?" she asked, her voice quieter now. "A story for everyone else." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "That is not what this is," he said. Lily turned then, finally looking at him, searching his face for something more. "Then what is it?" she asked. The question hung between them, heavier than anything before it. Ethan opened his mouth, then stopped. For the first time, he did not have an immediate answer. And that silence said more than words ever could. Lily felt it settle in her chest, slow and heavy, like something breaking without making a sound. "I understand," she said after a moment, her voice steady even though her heart was not. Ethan stepped closer, just enough to close the distance. "Lily, no," she said gently, shaking her head. "You were honest from the beginning. This was a contract. I agreed to it." Her fingers moved slowly to the ring, touching it in a way that felt different now, like she was remembering what it meant, or what it was supposed to mean. "I just forgot for a moment," she added quietly. Ethan's expression shifted, something urgent rising beneath the surface. "This is not just a contract anymore," he said. Lily looked at him, her eyes soft but clear. "Then why does it still feel like one?" The question landed, and this time, there was no space to avoid it. Ethan stepped forward again, closer than before, his voice lower now. "Stay," he said. "Just one word. Simple. Honest. But not enough." Lily shook her head slowly, her hand dropping from the ring. "I cannot stay somewhere I do not know is real," she said. The silence that followed felt final in a way nothing else had. She stepped past him, her movement calm, measured, even as everything inside her felt unsteady. Ethan did not stop her immediately, not because he did not want to, but because for the first time, he did not know how. And that was the moment everything changed. Because this time, she was not leaving because of the contract. She was leaving because she needed the truth, and he had not given it to her. The city felt louder than usual, even though nothing had really changed. Lily walked without a clear destination, her steps slow, her thoughts louder than everything around her. She had left with almost nothing, just a small bag and the life she had before all of this began. But something inside her was different now, something that could not simply return to what it was. She stopped near a small cafe on a quiet corner, the kind of place she would have felt comfortable in before, the kind of place that made sense. She sat by the window, her fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee she had barely touched, her eyes lost in the reflection staring back at her. The ring was no longer on her finger. She had left it behind. It felt like the only thing she could do to remind herself what was real and what was not. Across the city, cameras flashed again, but this time not at a wedding, not at a perfect image carefully created. This time, it was chaos controlled by sharp questions and louder expectations. Ethan stood in front of them, the same man who had always known exactly what to say, exactly how to stand, exactly how to control the narrative. But today, something was different. The questions came quickly, one after another, about the contract, about the marriage, about whether any of it had ever been real. He could have answered the way he always did. Clean, distant, safe. But he did not. For the first time, he hesitated. And then, slowly, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. The contract. The same one that had defined everything between them. The cameras focused instantly, the room falling into a different kind of silence. Ethan looked at it for a moment, his expression no longer unreadable, no longer controlled in the same way. There was something else there now. Something honest. You are right, he said finally, his voice steady but quieter than before. It started as a contract. The words moved through the room, expected but still heavy. It was supposed to be simple, predictable, temporary. He paused, his fingers tightening slightly around the paper. But I was wrong. The shift was subtle, but it was there. Real. Unplanned. Because somewhere along the way, it stopped being an agreement. He looked up then, not at the cameras, but past them, like he was searching for something that was no longer there. And I did not know how to say that out loud. The silence that followed was deeper now, not filled with questions, but with something else. Something waiting. Slowly, Ethan unfolded the contract, his hand steady this time, and without another word, he tore it in half. Then again, and again. The sound was quiet, but it carried further than anything else he could have said. There are no terms anymore, he continued, his voice clearer now. No conditions. No timeline. He took a small breath. Something human, something real. There is only one truth. Across the city, Lily looked up from her coffee as the television behind the counter shifted to the same